people think that because you're a Class C resident, you're a lower class human. No, you're lower class economic, but you're not a lower class human. We're all equal as humans.
Welcome to the Threefold Real Estate Investing Podcast. This is the podcast where you'll not only learn how you can achieve massive success in multifamily real estate investing, but also how you can simultaneously pursue great relationships with your family and a better walk with God. You can achieve financial freedom through real estate investing without sacrificing the relationships that mean the most to you. Now, here's your host, Lee Yoder.
Welcome back, Threefold listeners. I hope you're having a great week. Got another great guest today. Bruce Wuollet is joining us. A little bit about him, and then we'll bring him in. He's joining us from down in Arizona. Bruce is the founder, visionary, and current owner of Bakerson. He grew up in the bakery business in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. He wanted to pay homage to his now late father, hence the name Bakerson. So that's where the name comes from. We'll get into that a little bit more. But after trying his hands in a few different ventures in Minnesota, Chicago, Phoenix, finally found his passion in real estate. He has a proven track record of success throughout Bakerson's nearly 20 years in business with thousands of individual units bought, repositioned, and sold. His focus is on finding good deals while his passion is serving the residents, providing them a great place to live, shelter. Prior to launching Bakerson in 2002, he served on the acquisition team at a Phoenix-based real estate investment company. Bruce, that's a lot. We'll get into a bunch of that. But first, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us. Excited to have you. But Bruce, could you take us back to when you first got into real estate? It's been a little while for you. You've done a lot, but take us back to then. What were you doing then? And why did you, I guess, you tried some of the other ventures, but just take us back to that. Why did you end up getting into real estate?
Well, hey, thanks for having me on, Lee. I'm excited to be here. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, sure.
How did I get into real estate? It was, kind of by accident, actually. I had a drug education business. This was back in 2000, 2001. And my business partner was a drug enforcement officer for the city of Phoenix. And we were doing drug education for hospitality industry. And with the stock market went soft, our biggest client was a huge hotel corporation, and they canceled their contract. And I thought, instead of fighting it, I said, the market's soft, the stock market had crashed, the people coming to Phoenix, and it's right around 2001, 2002. Okay. All of a sudden, the summertime, it just dropped off. So I said, let's just close the doors. We broke even, didn't lose money, didn't make money, broke even. So let's start something else. And a guy that I know was doing tax lien foreclosures. He was buying real estate, and he needed some help on his team. So then he was my mentor. No, he passed away some years ago, but he was my mentor in getting into properties really, really inexpensive, which was tax lien foreclosures. And At that time, I also had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I see it on your shelf behind you. Yep. In fact, I ran into Kiyosaki the other day. I was down at a lunch in Biltmore, and he was going into the fitness center. Oh, cool. That was pretty funny. So yeah, we see him in town. He's local here, so we see him from time to time at different events. Pretty neat. That's neat. But anyway, so I read that book, and it really resonated with me that, hey, we can use other people's money. And so then some partners. So I talking to my at that time I was a minority partner in the business as the acquisitions, and Gary is his name. And I said, Gary, you're leaving a lot of money on the table when you're doing these tax liens. And sometimes these people just sell for $10,000 for a $50,000 house. He said, that's not my model. That's not my business model. I only do tax liens, foreclose, or take over the foreclosures and get properties that way. And I said, well, how about these two houses that you have down on 16th Street in Northern or Southern? And I said, what are you gonna do with those? And he said, those guys will sell. He said, well, I got the one in tax lien, but if you want to buy the neighboring one, let's work out a deal. So then I ended up buying those two properties from him. And then I partnered with some other guys, and we started buying some houses. We had 3 houses, triplex and a duplex in Phoenix. And we had private money, 100% funded, cash flowed, paid the investor their money, and had the difference come in. Yeah. And so that's how I got into it. And then from there, I don't know how long you want to go on that, because it's, years
so that's great. I mean, that's how you got into real estate. And then you started seeing, I think, Bruce, you started seeing the power of versus kind of more of a transactional business of, hey, this is a great way to make money with real estate, but now how can I get more on the passive side and more the residual income versus, hey, every transaction we do, we make money, but you got to keep churning versus as soon as you decide to hold on to the properties, and hold them as rentals, now you get to continue making money as long as you hold them and make cash flow. So it sounds like you're building up this little portfolio. What did you do from there? What was kind of the next step? I know now you're doing something different, but maybe just take us through your journey, kind of jumping forward to what you're doing now.
Yeah, the Clip Notes version. So in this would have been 2002. Is the fall of 2002. A guy approached me and said, "Hey, I'd like to partner with you on going. I wanted to go full time. The other partners didn't want to go full time, and so then Jack Martin approached me. We visited. We said, "Hey, I can do this full time. He'll do the construction. He'll oversee construction, and I'll do the acquisition for our company." So we started doing that. We picked up some buy, fix, and sell houses. And I remember the first one. We bought it for $17,000, repaired it for $19,000, and sold it for $75,000. And it was like, those numbers are completely like, people are like, what, in Phoenix?
Yeah.
I said, this was 2002, October. So then I was doing that. Well, I was driving neighborhoods and I was finding way more deals than we could ever possibly buy.
Yeah.
So I'd have a list of these people, these houses we could buy for next to nothing, it felt like at the time. So then what I did is I was at a meeting with Jack's brother, Scott, and we went up to, he had hired one of those boot camps where they do in the streets teaching wholesaling. And he says, I don't want to go to that, Bruce, but that's kind of more up your alley. Why don't you go take a look at that? So I said, okay. So I went up to Seattle, and a guy that's become a dear friend of mine, Jim Staples, taught me how to wholesale. And I said, and while I was there, I flipped a property in Phoenix. So a man from Arlington, Texas, showed me while I was in Seattle, Washington, how to flip a house in Phoenix. And we actually got it under contract. And then we closed like 2 weeks later. I was like, okay, this is real. This can be done.
Yeah.
And that one buyer, Joe, ended up buying 47 houses from us in 1 year. And so I would just call him up and say, hey, I got this property. What would you buy it for? He'd go drive by. I'll give you 35. So I'd go back to the seller and say, I'll offer you 30,000 for the house. He says, I need 35. And I go back and forth. Then I called Joe. Hey, Joe, he needs 35. Okay, I'll give you 40. And then he knew what I was making as a spread. And I just fed the machine. And then this turned into where we did over 2,000 wholesales in Phoenix Metro over the years.
Yeah.
But then when things change, enter the internet, we were the yellow note guys driving around neighborhoods. When I first started, I had a car with no AC. It was really hot in Phoenix. I said,
you were hustling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I said, I got to make a living. And so we went out and we did really well. Well, as this things changed, the internet was brought in. I said, well, we can't compete. These people are going online and they supply a lead, a drive report, title insurance, and a loan. And they charge, $2,000 and people can get into this house. And I'm like, man, I can't compete with that. We don't have the system. So we said, hey, we could wholesale multifamily. So we did, I think it was 24 or 25 apartments that we flipped, anywhere from $10,000 to $200,000 flip, and just started flipping contracts that way. And this would have been 2012. Okay. So 10 years ago. And then 2014, we said, hey, these guys are making money. We could syndicate. We're operators. We know how to fix and sell. We've done a number of those. So we started fixing and selling, and we syndicated, or we partnered on the first deal, and then we syndicated on the second, which was 64 unit in Phoenix, and then 120 unit, which was 34 plexes across 10 acres in Glendale, Arizona. So we did those two. We said, hey, this is great. So we did 4 more properties this was 2014, 15, 16. We did 6 projects, smallest being 8 units, and the largest being 120. Yeah. Well, then I started looking at Tucson at that point, getting a syndicating there and buying deals, and we did 11 there. Well, in 2016, Jack Martin and I, business partners, we split our business. He went into mobile home parks, going that route, much more slow cash flow, but really a good model. They're doing really well in their business, and kudos to him for seeing the niche that he carved out there for himself. I'm really proud of him for that. But yeah, amicable division of the business, still friends.
Did you sell the portfolio, or do you guys still hold the portfolio?
We didn't have a portfolio because we were getting in and out of those in 12 to 18 months.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep.
So then
like a big, huge, long flip.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
what they became.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah.
well, then, so we did that, did 11 projects in Tucson. They're all sold. And then we picked up one in Sierra Vista, one in Albuquerque. And now we're in Dallas, Fort Worth, have a project there, which is brand new, 152 units, just closed down a couple weeks ago. But those are long-term holds. And what happened is we were doing, like you just mentioned, the long flips. And I'm like, it's great for income, but it really, doesn't build wealth, and it doesn't build, it feels like we're always unemployed. We're always looking for work, every day looking for work. And I've been telling people that, the 18 to 24 month flips, or 18 to 24 month, even though by tax code is passive investing, as a sponsor, it's active. And it is not passive investing where buying cash flow is. So we switched to buying cash flow or creating cash flow as our model. And that's what we're doing now. Is everything we buy has to cash flow, and it's going to be a longer, 10-year hold or 10-year model is what we're writing it on or underwriting it on, but there's no sale date. Could be 10 years, could be 7, could be 30. We'll see as the time progresses. However, within 10 years, the investors will have received all their money back, and they're still owners in the deal.
You've done a lot of different things, been in real estate for a long time. And it's neat kind of seeing this progression that you've made and done well every step of the way. I would love to kind of hit on this last, I guess, point, like a step of evolution, I guess, in your investing career that you've made from, doing kind of more the long flip of a multifamily property. People call that like repositioning an apartment and then, selling it, realizing all the equity, until to where you're at now, where you're like, no, I'd more want to hold on and hold these for long term. I'm always thinking about this because when you buy a 100-unit apartment building and you pay, these are more Ohio prices, but 50,000. But you've been there out in Arizona, $50,000 a unit. Let's say you put another 20 into it, so you're into it for per unit, so you're into it for 70 a unit, and you could sell for 100 a unit. So you can make a great spread, you can make a great living, but then you no longer own anything. So like you said, now I'm unemployed because I no longer own 100 units. I went from 100 units to 0 units, and maybe you own a couple others, but each time you sell, you're getting rid of stuff. You have no cash flow, right? You got a bunch of income, and if you own it for more than a year, sure, it's somewhat tax friendly, better than ordinary income, but you no longer own anything. But there's a velocity of money there. There is an argument to be made for that. You could then take that money and buy another one and do it again or whatever, but you are very active. I totally agree with you there, Bruce. We're doing that. And it's a lot of work to reposition a property, and then you can be paid handsomely, but then you're done. It's just like a big flip that you work on for longer and makes you more money than a single family, but similar principle versus what you're kind of moved into with, hey, let's get these. And maybe we, maybe on a flip, Bruce, maybe you as a general partner can make a few $100,000 in 18 months because you're the GP and doing all the work. And whereas maybe you get into one of these and maybe it's just, I don't know, 20, 30,000 a year. So after 3, you've only made, a fraction of what you could have made if you go ahead and sell the property, but you get to keep making that. Can you speak into that a little bit more, Bruce, on maybe just where you're at maybe it has to do with where you're at in your career, or just maybe you've just kind of learned more. Talk a little bit more about that transition, maybe some of the pros and cons of both, but why now you're really settling in on let's buy properties and let's hold for 10 years.
Well, it's something my son is actually, he's our acquisitions now, and he's been very persistent, and we should really hold these and just create the cash flow. Yeah. He wants to travel. I like to travel. And if you have that, when you quit working, when you're taking time off, you're not making money, even though over a 24-month period, it feels like you can take time off, but you're really not cash flowing. And so he persisted on that. But what really pushed me over the top, Lee, was we were selling a property, and you get beat up pretty hard by a buyer when you're in escrow. Oh, we want this, we want that, especially prior to the last 2 years. Yeah. They're always looking for a retrade. They come in with a high offer and they play these games. And I'm like, we don't do that. We don't retrade. When we buy a property, we close on it. We make an offer and we either close on it, or if there's something the seller didn't reveal that shows up in our due diligence, then we'll back out. And if the seller says, hey, I really want to sell, I'm a seller, they can come back to us with a new price. But we don't retrade. It's just, it's really difficult. And I know people would say, we'll just make a high offer. And then once we get close, we'll retrade. That's just emotional. It's an emotional disaster in my mind to do that, to play people's emotions, I think is wrong. So with that, when we're going in there, people are buying from us and they're beat us up. And then a year later, you go drive by the property and the major things they complained about, they never did anything with. The broken fence, the unpaved, the parking lots in Tucson are typically pretty rugged, which is something that we've always fixed. But let's say we didn't do the parking lot, and they beat us up on that, and then they don't do it either. 2-3 years later, it's still the same project. When I said, you know what, no, we really care about the residents. We really care about the residents. And why do we sell? We keep saying that our hyper focus is on the lower middle class and the upper lower class self-paying resident. That's what really has become, that's what the trigger, I hate using that term, but that's what really was a trigger for me, was to get into why do we hold, was for that very reason, if we're serving the residents, the best way for us to serve the residents is to continue to be the owner, because I feel that our focus is second to none based on what I've seen in the marketplace.
Yeah.
And right now you see, syndicators, they're good. They're good business people. They're good, but they don't have a focus on the resident. They're focusing on the exit. Their whole focus, hyper focus, is on the exit of the property, and the long-term residents, they don't have any, because they just repositioned it, moved the rents up to market. The people that couldn't afford it left. The people that can afford it are in there, and that's great. But why not keep them? Why not continue to be in their life as long as they want to rent from you?
Some great points there, Bruce. I want to dig into that a little bit, because it's hard to do that today, I think. And kind of two questions for you. One, it's so competitive, and things have changed, here a good bit over the past few months as interest rates rise, and things have become a little less competitive, and prices are coming down a little bit, but really it's only enough to match the increase in interest rates. But it's hard to get in at a good price these days. So sometimes I think buyers feel forced to get aggressive and raise the rent and kind of take it up a notch, because they had to pay a lot to get into it. And so it's almost like they're justifying their price. And then, you want to do well financially, so you raise. So how are you getting in at a good price in order to be in a position where you can say, hey, we don't have to get super aggressive and get rid of everybody. We can kind of, keep these residents, and maybe we raise rent a little bit, but we're keeping a lot of the residents. How do you get in at a good price? And then how are you setting up these syndications and maybe positioning it with your investors such that you can hold long-term? Because some people may say, hey, I'm all about buying into an apartment, but I want my money back in 3 years or whatever. And that's what a lot of these syndicators are doing. Yep. We're going to get super aggressive, get rid of everybody, jack up rent, increase the revenue, sell, and get you your money back. So how are you getting in and getting good enough deals to where you can kind of have that model of keeping residents and really focusing on cash flow and not just flipping a property and making a bunch on the back end? How are you getting in? And then how are you setting that up with your investors?
So getting into the first rule is we're not buying in Phoenix.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine it'd be hard.
So it's so high priced here, and the cash flow is just not there. People are buying and selling on pro forma. There's people from all over the world investing here. It's fun to watch, and it's exciting that some of my peers are doing well. It's cool to see them, buy a property, turn around and sell it for a huge return.
Yeah.
But you and I know that's short term. That's not going to last. And I want to build a legacy. I have you see the picture, 6 children, and we just had our 13th grandchild. So we have generational wealth to create. My son and son-in-law and my daughter and brother-in-law work for me. So it's a family business, and you can pass on skills, but what if you passed on a little bit of a business that they could buy into and be involved with? So, but as for buying, the last 2 years have been brutal, very brutal. We've been outbid on everything almost. Sure. So we did over halfway through a motel conversion in Southern Arizona. That's how we bought there. Okay. We had one that fell through the cracks up in Albuquerque, a little building that we bought up there that 36 units. So it's not a big project, but it was one that said, hey, it cash flows day one, and we bought it for $40 a door, which is unheard of, or $41,667, which is unheard of in the Southwest. Yeah. And the rents are, nipping at $1,000. So, and then as far as raising the rents, we'll raise the rents to market. We will not create the market, but we will bring them to market. But what we offer is a nicer product. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was at a conference, and somebody had been talking about putting solid surface countertops and shaker cabinets and stainless appliances in C-class. He says, C-class properties, the residents don't need that. I'm like, what's need got to do with it? What if you could offer that? You could buy right, you could offer that and charge market rent. Who's going to have less turnover? It's the one that takes care of the residents. Yeah. Now we looked at these properties in recently in Dallas and in Phoenix and Tucson, or Tucson more recently. we looked at projects there, and it's amazing what people do when they call it a value add, when they didn't even take the time to sand the door frames, and they're all bumpy with all the dirt that they left on there and old paint. And it's like, it takes literally 10 minutes a door, but because they're in and out so fast. So those type of things, those shortcuts drive me absolutely bonkers. And so we were just in our Dallas property and visiting with the property managers on that. And I said, we got to knock these bumps off, make it a little nicer. So if we're going to get market rents, we got to be above market quality, at least when we move in. We know once they live there, it's not going to be the same thing that when they move out, because people do beat the properties up. People live there, and some people live more than others, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it does get but let's at least put our best effort. We're trying to push to the next level, but my care for the residents is that we want to place that safe, functional, durable, and clean. Very, very simple model.
Yep.
Safe, functional, durable, clean.
Yeah.
And as far as the investors, I got a secret here, Lee, and I know your listeners are going to love to hear this. A secret on an investor database. The fastest way to shrink your investor database is to go from a short-term hold to a long-term. You start making those calls, you have crickets, and crickets don't have money. I checked; they have no cash. Yep. So it's a difficult journey. It shrunk our database, but what we did on that one in Dallas, we partnered with some folks out of Vegas, and they brought in capital. Most of the capital, actually, we're the operator. So we did a strategic partnership on that one. Okay. And we're looking more towards doing some of that, because our database primarily came from wholesaling, where they're in and out in 52 days.
Oh, I was going to say, you didn't train them right, Bruce. You trained them right.
No, I spoil them right.
That's exactly right.
Which is fine. But then it's been growing now organically, one or two investors a week coming and talking to us and getting excited about our next deal. So it's still growing, but just to be totally vulnerable, I guess you could say, is my strength is not capital raising. My strength is getting the deals and the intuitive nature that I have when I walk the properties. I've been walking Class C down to war zone properties for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And when you walk in, okay, this one feels right. So it just feels right. Let's just run the numbers. I feel comfortable here. Yeah. Sometimes you go on a property and you get the hair standing up on the back of your neck. That something is telling you something.
Yeah.
You should probably, your sixth sense is there. Intuition is real. And if you say, ooh, I don't like it, I don't feel comfortable here, it's a little too rough, at least this demographic. If we get it, it's got to be such a good deal that we would then empty a property. We've done that in Tucson. We had a property that went in and it's like, and we bought it for $23 a door. I think that answers your questions, but the way to find that is we just said, we're going to find a new investor database. And we found out the best ones are in other people's Rolodex. So we'll just partner with them.
I think one thing you said there that really hit me, and I know this, but I'm glad you said it and kind of build it out. And that's that if you come in and do well, and maybe you do over improve a little bit, you keep the residents. And we all know vacancy is what kills you. You're going to cash flow so much better if you can just keep the property full and with good residents. So you guys are really providing a nice property, maybe not the best, but for that class, for that area, you're providing a really good product. And you're getting in at a decent price, which is very hard to do. I appreciate you being honest about that. It's very hard to do. So you're going to lose out on a bunch, and you got to get the ones, maybe a little bit smaller, a 36 unit that slips through the cracks, even though maybe you guys would rather own a 100 unit. Hey, it's just 36, but numbers work. Let's go in here and do the right thing here. Maybe it's a motel conversion or hotel conversion or whatever, getting creative to make it so you can get in. And then, one thing we've done a better and better job about is coming in with a good rehab budget and the bank financing that and feeling like, okay, we've got the funds here. Let's put it into the property. Let's do right. Let's make the right upgrades and provide a really nice one. And then you can get some really great residents and hopefully keep them for a long time. So love that model.
Yeah. Like this, the one in Dallas, two quick points. The one in Dallas is well underway, and we're going to put backsplashes, tile backsplashes. Some of them have it, but we're going to put that, and it's Class C. A lot of people don't do that. And we're going to upgrade the cabinet faces and the doors. The doors we're putting in, instead of the solid surface, solid doors, we're putting in 6 panels. And it's just amazing how much the difference. If you walk in, it looks like, wow, that's nice. And it's not that much more. They're hollow core, which is be nice to put solid core doors in, but those are expensive because they can't get beat up too bad.
Yep.
But one other thing is really, really interesting. And at that same conference, they're talking about stainless appliances. Somebody said that make sure, and if you have a Class C property, make sure you put in the low flow showers. And they said, if you're in a class A, the class A residents aren't going to tolerate low flow. They're going to want a good water pressure. I'm like, oh, so water pressure is now a class? I'm like, no. Everybody wants high water pressure. Even those without money want high water pressure and take a shower. So if we put the low flow shower heads in, we put the good ones in so they actually have water pressure, because if you don't, they will get taken apart to remove that little, everybody's got access to Google. How do I increase the shower? Remove that plastic piece. Either don't put it in or put in a good one that's gonna give good pressure. Those are the little things that drive me crazy when you hear this, that people think that because you're a class C resident, you're a lower class human. No, you're lower class economic, but you're not a lower class human. We're all equal as humans. I mean, we breathe the same and
for sure.
same air, So as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about some of those little things that I hear other operators say that drive me crazy.
No, I like your heart behind that, Bruce. I really appreciate that. And then I appreciate you being honest too on the investor side, because I know that to be true. Most of our investors, hey, their money being illiquid for even 3 to 5 years, feels like way too long. So illiquid for 10 years. A lot of them just aren't there. Bruce, you've talked a lot about your family, so I'd love to transition to that a little bit. What has this journey been like for you and your family now? I love that now your family's really incorporated into the business. What's that journey kind of been like as you were, getting it going for the past 20 years, and then to the point now where you've got, several of your kids and in-laws and all that working with you? What's that journey been like?
Well, so I carried a rule over from my father, and a little bit about the Bakerson name. My father, I named the business before my father passed away. He had cancer at the time and was suffering, and so I named it Bakerson. And he was not a really super emotional guy, but he got the tears in his eyes, and he called me Boo. He said, "Thank you, Boo." And so it was like he liked that I named it Bakerson. And so I tell people that, and I have a pretty blunt nature, so I tell people I'm an SOB. I'm a son of a baker. And people chuckle, but yeah. So one of the things that he instilled in our minds, I grew up in the bakery business, 11 years old, working for Dad. And one thing he never did, and it was an absolute rule, that you do not take work home. So if there's drama at work, it stays at work. If there's drama at home, it stays at home. They're two separate entities. He says the business has a life and personality of its own, and it must be kept different. So we made no decisions. We didn't talk about work at home. So I worked for him, and we would sometimes bat heads at work. When you get home, that tension that was at work was erased. He comes home, and the first thing he'd say is, "How was your day of play?" He was really excited about it. He called it day of play. And I was like, that's something. So I incorporate that. We do not discuss work at home. I am not as perfect. I don't deal with it as perfect as he does. Sometimes I'll see my son, Ben, and I'll ask him a question. And my son-in-law is so funny because he's super quiet. He'll go, "We're at home." You're right. If he's present. So he does not talk about work. And we've done vacations together. We've done things, but when we're on vacation, we're vacation. When we're at work. And just had Father's Day, had some of the kids over and the family. We didn't talk about work. It was like, just work's at work now, it's at the office. And so it's one thing when I moved I had a home office, and it made it a little more difficult, but psychologically I moved the office out of the house because my wife said, "You don't work at home, you live at work." And I said, that's a good point. So we ended up moving the office out of the house, and it's a good thing, because that mental separation in a family business is paramount. Because people say that there's books written about why you shouldn't do business with friends and family, and I think it's the best place to start, because you have same core values, at least a higher chance of that. So and these people that my kids that work for me are more noble and better at what they do than I am, and it's just really a treasure to watch that growth and watch that change.
Sure. What age did you start yours at, Bruce? Have your kids kind of grown up in the business and been involved at all? Or was this something more like they get toward college age and they think, "Hey, Dad owns a business, maybe I'll go that route"? How did that kind of get started?
Okay. So my son, he'd come to help do the clean outs on houses. First of all, he was like, let me see. So he's 29. And so he was 9-10 years old, and we'd be driving neighborhoods, and I'd throw him in the car to take him downtown. And he thought he'd go down there, have them look up phone numbers. This was before, like, you couldn't do everything on Google. I'd go down. If I was finding an owner of a house, we'd drive down to the courthouse, in the basement of the courthouse, and they have the public records, who's been divorced, who's filed lawsuits. Well, they had home phone numbers in the documents. So I'd tell him to look through there, and he'd write them down. And he was really lucky to go to work for me. But the secret came out later. that I used them so I could use the carpool lane to get downtown because I hate traffic.
There you go. Yep. That's a good reason to take your son.
So anyway, so he did that for a while. And then he left the business. He went into school to be a mechanic for a diesel mechanic, got frustrated, said, hey, I want to come work for you. I said, no, at that point, I didn't want employees. And most of the employees had reported to Jack, my business partner. I said, I don't want employees. And you don't want to come work for you. And I said, no, you can't. Finally, I said, you know what? And over the time, people had kind of shifted to work for me because we had changed our business model over the time. And so I was taking over operations. And then I said, no, you can't work for me, but you can work for your Uncle Mike, who was my brother, who was at that point the head of acquisition. I said, you work for him for 1 year, the buffer between us for 1 year, and then you come work for me. Well, 13 months after he started, Mike ended up moving out of town. So then the position opened and he got involved and started taking it over. And then my daughter was asking me if she could work for me. I said, no, you can't. She was a nanny. And then she went to be another nanny. And then she went to a coffee shop. And finally I seen she tried like 5-6 jobs at 16, 17 years old. And I said, fine. And she's 18 now. I said, yep, you can work for me. So she just started this year. But she bugged me multiple times, but because I didn't really want to draw people in and try to create their future. I want them to create their future. And if it includes me, that's wonderful. But if they want to do something else, that's awesome too. I'll support them either way.
Yeah, but it's a unique opportunity. And yeah, the fact that they want to, Bruce, I think says a lot about the way you must have operated as a father and, an entrepreneur and a business owner. I mean, the fact that they would have the interest, you must not have, been living a life that people would look at and go, gosh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do what dad does. He's stressed out all the time. He brings work home with him. He's like, obviously it wasn't that where they're like, I don't want to do that. There must've been something you were, doing along the way that they said, man, I kind of want to do what dad's doing, do it with him because it's somewhat appealing.
It's funny you mentioned that because I look at it a lot differently, which is, you might be right, but I thought, they must love me because love is blind. They can't see all my warts and all my troubles.
Could be that too. Yeah. Yep.
So,
could be some of that too. I always like to ask 2 questions. I'll usually ask this one second, but what do you think the key ingredient is to be a successful real estate investor? And then I like to say, what does it take to be a successful real estate investor and keep your priorities straight, be a good husband, be a good dad. So you already kind of gotten into some of the second part, but let's answer both of those. So what do you think is like the key ingredient if someone wants to get into real estate investing? What's the key ingredient to be successful?
Do what I didn't do. Don't try to blaze your own path. There's so many resources out there and follow those that have gone before. Real estate is cyclical. We're going to have ups and downs and it's going to be consistent over time. That not the same exact reasons, but there's going to be changes in the market. We're right now in a really strange market where people are already getting panicky that the interest rates are up. Interest rates are where they were 3 years ago. Why are we panicking? Anything under 7% is doable. It just changes your entry point so you can cash flow. Just buy on the cash flow, get rid of the emotion side of it. It's very difficult though, but people are looking at their refinance probably coming up this year. And they're like, oh man, this was not in my pro forma. I had underwrote that it was going to be less. So there'll be some panic in the streets for some people. But the biggest thing is follow that. The other thing is a few years ago, I've always been a reader, but I was a reader of fiction and some nonfiction, but I've become an avid reader, try to read a book a week. And I would say just be a good student of the game, but it's not so much, if you want to do well in real estate, what I found out that you need to do well in human relations. Those that are close to me are very dear. And those that are not, I can be quite cold. And I didn't realize that. People told me that you're kind of brutal and you can be so cold. So I realized that I got to learn to get to know people outside of my network. People that instead of some of the human relations that I had were frankly transactional, and I'm turning them into annuities that pay dividends in human relations, because I was treating human relations like transactional. I'd meet somebody, talk to them, do a deal, never talk to them again. I'm like, why? My dad always told me that life is all about the relations that you make. I'm like, I'm not making relationships. I'm making a business here.
Yeah. So I'm trying to do both. Yeah, that's good insight.
Yeah,
that's really good. Yeah,
so that's probably I treat very, very cold sometimes human relations, and that's something I'm learning, and I'm not too old to learn. Well, the second part of the question, well, I don't know that I've done so well on that. It's I mean, we are in July having our 31st wedding anniversary, so I think that's somewhat of a success story in this day and age. So I guess I can hang my hat on that. Thank you. So there's that, but the biggest thing is to not take work home. I vowed to my wife she would not be involved in the business when I started my own business, and to this day she hasn't. The biggest challenge is there's times they want to do personal guarantees. They want to do they want the wife to sign off, and I've been able to get by without any signatures. She hasn't had to sign any documents except for the tax returns every year. So that's probably one of the biggest things. The other thing is work hard, play hard. When you play, just go play hard. Like we went to Alaska, I brought my bike, and I biked 7 out of 10 days I was there, put on tons of miles, and it was really fun. So work hard, play hard, and give it all, and don't give it all at work that when you get home you're too tired.
Sure.
It's so easy to do. I know that there's books and experts saying that, you got to you got to work around the clock to be successful. And if you're going to do that, when you spend time at home, make sure it's high energy and make sure that it's quality time. You don't just go home to sleep. And that's, I've done that. I know that from experience. I'm not saying that somebody else is doing that. I'm saying that I have done that. Sure. Where I'm too tired to be the proper husband, too tired to be the proper father. And now I try to keep that balance, and I block out my days, and it's working well. I am high energy usually till I go to bed, but when I hit the sheets, I'm wasted out.
That's the way to be. Good stuff there, Bruce. Yeah, I appreciate that. Hey, since you're such an avid reader, what's a good book you've read recently that you would pass on to the listeners?
My favorite one of all time, I think, is Life is Magic by John Dornboss. That was a while ago that I read that. That's an amazing story because it's heartfelt. But as far as personal development, Tim Grover's book that he wrote about Michael Jordan and Relentless. That is incredible.
Bruce, this has been great, man. Before I let you go, I want to make sure people know how to get a hold of you. I know you're at Bakerson.com, and then you're pretty active on LinkedIn. Is that where people should go to find out more about you? And
there's two ways to reach me. In Bakerson.com, if you go to, it's Bakerson, son of a Baker, Bakerson.com, and you get on my calendar. And it's an open calendar for the next 2 weeks. Rolling through. And then the second way is bruceonlinkedin.com.
And then Bruce, before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests, how might my listeners and I be praying for you over the coming weeks?
Boy, how would you pray for me in the coming weeks? Just that I will remain humble through these times that are ever changing, and humility is key in life, and that success is not ours. It's a God-given gift, and we should be thankful for that.
Yeah.
That I always remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be happy to pray for that for you, and hopefully all of us are praying for that. That's good stuff. Well, Bruce, thanks so much, man. Appreciate your openness, honesty, learning from your experience, and then kind of where you're at today. I love your take on, kind of getting in on these C-class properties and providing a really good standard of living, a really good home for these folks, and not cutting all the corners, even though maybe you can, getting at a good price and doing things right and making residents really happy and keeping them. It's hard to do. It's hard to get in at a good price. It's hard to find maybe a lot of investors that want to hold long term, but I really enjoyed talking through all that with you. Thanks so much for your time today, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And cutting corners on a property that you're going to hold long term is going to bite you in the end. Be aware of that.
Yeah, it's a good ending word. Good stuff.
All right, thanks, Dave.
Bruce.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us for another great episode. I hope you'll take action on what you've learned today. If you enjoyed today's show, please consider leaving Lee a 5-star rating and review. And check him out on threefoldrei.com. Until next time, 1 Timothy 6:17.